Fitzpatrick from the Bureau of Contract Administration. Please proceed, and thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, President Good, Commissioners, Mr. Jordan, and executive staff. My name is Kimberly Fitzpatrick with the Office of Wage Standards in the Bureau of Contract Administration. Our office is asking the board today to approve the execution of a renewal memorandum of understanding between the Bureau of Contract Administration and the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division. This agreement will allow the agencies to collaborate when desired on common initiatives such as outreach regarding workers' rights and employers' responsibilities, training of staff, and joint investigations. The previous MOU was for 3 years and expired last month, and this successor MOU contains no substantive changes and will extend the partnership for 3 more years. The agreement will not obligate the Bureau or the city in any way, and there will be no impact on the general fund. We have enjoyed a very productive partnership with the local office of the DOL and look forward to continuing it with your approval today. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick. Commissioners, are there any questions on this item?
I have none.
No questions on my side either.
Ms. Fitzpatrick, I do have just a couple of questions, if I may. One is, can you just summarize for us a little bit how the first iteration of this MOU played out?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The first MOU started in June of 2016, which was sort of at the beginning stages of our office's development. So really, the first MOU, we were really a beneficiary of the local Department of Labor's office. They conducted several training sessions for our investigators. We also were able to establish a case referral system with them. Oftentimes, folks aren't quite sure which agency enforces which law. So we were able to sort of streamline case referrals, which has been very helpful for the public. We've received several referrals from them, and we've been able to refer several folks to their office for the appropriate enforcement. We've also, actually, right before COVID hit, we were slated to do some joint outreach. The DOL has some partnerships established with the local consulates where they attend events and staff booths to provide information to the public about different employee rights and employer responsibilities, and they invited us to participate in that and share information about our minimum wage law as well. So that's something that we would really like to do going forward once it's safe to do so.
So, thank you. Can we assume that then there are areas of enforcement or investigation that BCA doesn't have, in the Office of Wage Standards, doesn't have the authority to deal with alone?
Yes, there's a lot of overlap, but there are a lot of sort of niche labor laws that the DOL has that we don't. So, for example, if we get a minimum wage complaint, we go out and investigate it, and let's say we find overtime violations. That's something that the state labor code prevents our office from enforcing. However, the Department of Labor can enforce that. So a partnership and the ability to refer cases and work together helps us sort of leverage everybody's resources to hold the bad actors accountable. The Department of Labor also enforces things like the Fair Labor Standards Act. They have several child labor laws. They enforce the Family and Medical Leave Act. They're also enforcing expanded paid sick leave for the coronavirus, which the city also has. So there's a lot of overlap, and it's really nice to be able to work together.
So, and looking at the MOU, it seems pretty clear that, but please confirm this, that there is no place in which the city or OWS cedes authority or cedes its territory or its space in any way regarding ordinances, regulations, or any of our own practices.
That's absolutely right. We have no obligation. We would handle things exactly how we would want to handle them. We're not ceding any authority to the DOL with how we would enforce any type of law or perform any of our regular responsibilities.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick. I know I already asked, but just given the discussion, I want to ask again, any questions, colleagues?
Yeah, I wanted to ask in terms of this memorandum of understanding, how does it reflect the implementation of the program we had where we were going out into communities, and I think we had a program that was in different phases where we were trying to inform small businesses according to their size how and when they should implement and increase the minimum wage. How does this memorandum of understanding reflect the work that we did in that? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Davis. They would be totally separate. We would still continue that work. Unfortunately, due to COVID, many of our outreach activities, that one in particular, has been put on hold. Our in-person outreach to businesses. So there would be no overlap between those efforts and this MOU.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues?
I wanted to ask just a quick question, if I may.
Yeah, of course. Please, Commissioner Vegas.
Ms. Fitzpatrick, or maybe somebody from, Ms. Fitzpatrick, excuse me. If you can let us know the information that you gather from Department of Labor and your MOU, is any of that shared with the other bureaus? Or is that strictly just on contracting and it seems like it's just labor, wage, and hourly division of Department of Labor, but I'm wondering if there's any kind of beneficial information that you guys may see that other bureaus may benefit from.
Thank you very much for the question. We haven't shared anything yet. You're right that the MOU really pertains to our labor laws, specifically minimum wage and paid sick leave. But that's something that we can definitely keep in mind going forward.
Okay, I just think it's probably a larger issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Colosa, Commissioner or Vice President Garcia, any questions?
I just have a clarifying question. There's no money being interchanged here, is there?
Hi, Commissioner Garcia. No, there's not. There's absolutely no financial impact, no effect on resources.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions, Commissioner Colosa? I think you're muted.
Commissioner
Sorry about that.
Oh,
I don't have any questions, but just a comment and thank Ms. Fitzpatrick for her team's work. They have some great dashboards and some stats available on their website for some of the work they do in the outreach that they conduct. I know, like she mentioned, some of it has stopped given COVID-19, but I attended one of their meetings with stakeholders last year, and you have a great relationship with all the CBOs and other workforce agencies in terms of the work that they do. So just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick and Ms. Clark. My own personal experience with this partnership from the Mayor's Office was very positive recently, working with the Government Worker Center and some of the industries here locally. So this feels like a very promising extension. So hearing no other questions, is there a second to my motion to adopt item 2 forthwith? Commissioner
I'll
Davis?
second.
Oh, and also Commissioner Cloza?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any objections, Commissioner Villegas?
No objections, thank you.
Commissioner Garcia, or Vice President Garcia?
No, no objections.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, the item is adopted and sent forthwith.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Okay, this takes us to our third item, again in all council districts. Another memorandum of understanding from the Bureau of the Bureau of Engineering, recommending the board delegate signature authority to the city engineer to execute the MOU between the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Engineering, and the County of Los Angeles for online access to the county's real property index services on the Your Online Document Access System. Our representative today is Issam Amaraji. Forgive me, Mr. Amaraji, if I'm doing you a disservice, but please go ahead. And welcome.
Good afternoon, President Good, and welcome to the Board of Public Works.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and everyone. My name is Issam Amaragi, and I'm the Acting Division Engineer for the GIS and Mapping Division with the Bureau of Engineering. It's my pleasure today to brief you about this request. The county has two online systems. One of them is called the YODA system, Your Online Document Access, and another system online also, it's called the Real Property Index. And the Bureau of Engineering has been executing this memorandum with the county since 2011. Before that, it was the city clerk's office responsibility to obtain and update the property information within the city. But since 2011, that responsibility has been moved to the GIS and the Mapping Division within the Bureau of Engineering. The information that we obtain from this system is very important to maintain the lot lines and the ownership across the city of all properties. And it helps us identify easements, send mailings of hearings to owners across the city. So there is a lot of use for this, the data that we obtain, and we use it all the time to update the land base across the city, which is one of the responsibilities of the Bureau of Engineering. The MOU has no impact or no financial impact at all. The county is providing this service free of any charge to the Bureau of Engineering. So all we have to do is really to sign and execute the MOU. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Amarji. Commissioners, colleagues, any questions on this item?
No questions for me, thank you.
No questions from me either. Thank you.
Commissioner Caloza?
No questions for me either.
Okay. I do have one question, and appreciate the presentation, but for Mr. Jordan, just a procedural question. Is this something typically where the department would sign this MOU? Mr. Jordan?
Well, yeah, thank you for raising the issue. I'd like to make maybe a slight recommendation that we amend the board's action. I concur in the staff's recommendation that it be approved. It's an important program. It is, however, setting up a contract with LA County that will be in effect for up to 10 years, under which, although no money is being exchanged, we're not paying for it, it's a very good mutual relationship. There are some significant provisions, potential indemnification provisions going both ways. So as a contract being approved with the board, my recommendation is that rather than delegating authority to the city engineer for executing the MOU, again, which is a contract, is that it be signed by the president or two commissioners pursuant to how we execute other contracts. There is an administrative code provision. For the record, it's 22.324 that does provide the signature basis for which includes contracts that are being approved by the Board of Public Works. So the bottom line is I would recommend that we amend the board's recommended action. So rather than delegating authority to the city engineer, we actually have the president or two commissioners sign if the board would like to approve the item.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Mr. Amarji, is there any particular reason that BOE feels the need to delegate, requesting for the delegation, or is that just?
Not really. It's historically done. I mean, the last few years this way, the city engineer was authorized to sign this MOU. But if Mr. Jordan sees otherwise, the Bureau of Engineering has no objection to that.
Yeah, and I agree. That's my understanding as well. And it's really more of just a reflection on our sort of constantly going through and looking at these processes and then trying to, pick up things like that as we see them. So the reason it's done this way is because it's the way it's always been done. So I think this is a minor improvement in that process.
Well, I will be unable to replicate the administrative code number, Mr. Jordan, but I do agree with the spirit of your comments, and I think it's an important premise to hew to. So, what I would again ask if there's any questions from colleagues. If not, is there a second to my motion to amend amend the motion, amend item 3 moving forward for the board signature to require board signature and move it forward?
Mr. President, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer, if I could just to be clear on the amendment, the amending motion, and that is to approve the execution of the MOU. So we would strike out the delegation part, and then we would add a new recommendation to authorize the president or two members of the Board of Public Works to execute the MOU.
Yes, Dr. Campos.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice
I'll
President.
second.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Vice President Garcia. Seconded by Vice President Garcia. Any objections? Commissioner Villegas?
No objections.
Commissioner Colosa?
No objections, thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
None.
All right. Hearing none, the item is approved forthwith. Thank you
As
all.
amended.
Thank you, Mr. Amaraji. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, President. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this takes us to the fourth item. Again, in all council districts, this is a task order solicitation for Tetra Tech, recommending that the board authorize the director and general manager of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee to issue amendment number 1 to task order solicitation SN67 to Tetra Tech, Inc., from the on-call consultant list to extend the term of engagement starting from the issuance date of the original notice to proceed on August 23, 2018 through December 31, 2021 in order to continue providing the services. The budget of $3 million remains the same. Our representative today is Dr. Rowena Romano. Hi, Dr. Romano. How are you?
Good, President. Good to have you on the Board of Public Works.
Thank you. It's really good to hear from you.
So, good afternoon, Commissioner Garcia, Davis, Colosa, and Villegas as well, Executive Officer, City Attorney, and our city staff that's here. Rowena Romano, Senior Environmental Engineer with LA Sanitation and Environment. Just to give you a background, so President Good, in January 2017, LA San issued the top SN67 to all 25 on-call consultant firms. We received 3 proposals, including that from Tetra Tech, which was selected and awarded in August 8, 2018, and we executed a contract with them on August 23rd, 2018, and the total amount of $3 million budget. So the amendment is being requested to extend the term of the agreement to December 31st, 2021, with an optional 6-month extension. This is to provide Tetra Tech with additional time to complete our final measurements and final reports, as well as assist LA San with any more as-needed planning that we would need for this program to meet the mayor's Green New Deal goals. Specifically to that we are to launch a citywide residential food scrap collection program by 2021. The program was branded as Curb Your Food Waste LA, Shop Smart, Waste Less, Recycle the Rest, provided to 18,000 households, single families, as well as those apartment complexes of 4 units or less that LA Fans services across all 15 council districts. The residents were approached door to door, given a 2-gallon kitchen pail and as well as a how-to booklet that provided them information on food waste prevention tips and as well as how to use their kitchen pails. They were instructed to collect their food waste, including the bread, meat, cheese, bones, fruits, vegetables, in the pail, and then on a regular basis put those food scraps into their existing large green yard trimming bin. The commingled material was actually sent to a different processing place, CR&R's anaerobic digestion out in Paris, compared to where we usually send our green waste materials to. So we were able to reach 90% of the intended households with a 63% engagement in person when we went out to deliver those pails. LA Sun and Tetra Tech also developed all the outreach materials, conducted 27 community outreach events, and have completed 3 of the 4 measurements. Because of COVID-19, we were unable to keep with our timeline, but now Tetra Tech will be doing their 4th measurement starting next week, Monday, and they will be including all proper PPE, social distancing, and as well as frequent hand washing to ensure that the staff that's doing the final measurement will be safe. This measurement includes, doing waste characterization as well as visual inspection of the bins on the participating routes. So we hope to have the final report by December of this year, and then have Tetra Tech help us if we need so to implement a citywide program by 2021. So the amendment will not incur any more additional costs other than the $3 million already approved, and this is coming from the Integrated Solid Waste Management Fund. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Romano. Colleagues, any questions?
I do, if it's okay if I can go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. How many residents participated in this pilot program?
So we had, we outreached to 18,000 of them. About, I'd say 16,000 plus we were able to engage with and drop off the bins to them. The remaining 1,000 plus or so were sort of unable to reach, or we had bad addresses, or they refused to participate.
Okay, and were these 18,000 spread out throughout the whole city, or was it in just one specific area?
They were spread throughout the whole city. We have at least 4 or 5 routes within each council district.
Okay. Is there a way that we can get a more in detail report of what it's looking like, or when it's over, I guess, can we have a more thorough report of how the challenges and the successes that this pilot program had, given that it's been now 3 years, or it's going on 3 years now? And then how likely is it that this pilot program will be implemented? Do you guys have a sense of that already? Or will there be will we have to continue to do some more pilot programs?
Right, so the program has, we took the first year around August 28th to about April 2018, I'm sorry. August 2018 to about April 2019 to do the planning with procuring the bins and doing all the collateral material. The residents got the bins, I believe, in April 2019, so it's been about over a year that they've been engaged in the pilot program. We're doing our 4th measurement this coming Monday, so that'll take about 2 weeks to do that measurement and then report on it. We hope to have a final report by Tetra Tech by the end of this calendar year, by December, of which we will definitely be able to share with the Board of Public Works. Okay. And right now, and as we're going through the pilot and seeing how the residents are participating. We are planning for the implementation of a citywide, but we are also looking at other challenges such as infrastructure, contractors, private processors that can make food waste and green waste together. We are using one contractor right now, which is all the way in Paris, California. So as the city builds or more private contractors come in that can have this type of processing ability, that will open us up to, being able to provide this services to all residents.
Okay, thank you for that. That was, I look forward to that report at the end of the year.
Okay,
thank you.
I have a question as well, if I can ask President Good.
Yes, please, Commissioner Closa.
Okay, great. Thanks for the report, Ms. Romano. Just to follow up from what the Vice President said, I was curious if there were any changes that LA SAN was planning to make with this extended period of time, since more families and individuals are staying at home. So that might prove to be an opportunity to maybe get a better sample of what this pilot program looks like, since we're going to be at home for, until who knows. And so more people are cooking at home and having more food waste.
Yes, one of the concerns why we delayed our fourth measurement, we were supposed to take it in the April-May timeframe. When COVID hit, we were not certain how long this COVID was going to be impacted for. So we delayed a little bit, especially because of the not having enough PPE out there. The PPE was being used by a lot of folks, frontliners and not. So the folks who are doing our waste characterization and going out to do the measurement now have assured us that they have proper PPE. They can take the proper precautions now to keep social distancing and whatnot. So they will be doing the measurement again starting on Monday, and we do expect to see an increase possibly in the food waste overall, and hopefully the residents who are in the pilot program have taken this opportunity to be more engaged in participating. So we hope to see more food waste being put in the green bin and their participation in the pilot program.
Got it. Thank you for that explanation. And just one quick follow-up. So we won't expand the number of households participating, but we're going to just extend the period of time in which we're collecting samples for the existing pool. Am I understanding that correctly?
So the expansion of the program is still being debated internally in LA SAN. And the residents who are in the pilot will still be able to continue putting their food waste in the green bin. However, as Tetra Tech, we don't plan to do more waste characterization. It was just a 1-year period of sampling, but the residents will still be allowed to put food waste in their bin.
Okay. And how often is the food picked up?
It's on their regular collection day. So we had no changes yet. So it's once a week.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Rowena. I appreciate you answering our questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Closa. Commissioner Villegas, any questions?
No questions for me, thank you. I think the other two commissioners asked a lot of good substantive questions, so I'm good, thanks.
Great. Commissioner Davis?
I wanted to ask Dr. Romano, in terms of the length of time and the scope of the project, it was originally initiated on August the 23rd, 2018, is that correct?
Yes, that was our notice to proceed with our vendor.
So this is kind of the last, it's in, I guess, threes. I guess this is the last trimester of it, if you will, in terms of from 2020 to 2021. It is expected to culminate December 3rd, 31st of 21. Is that correct?
So we should be able to finish by December 31st, 2020 of this year, as we wrap up our last measurement. So we're giving more time to Tetra Tech to finish up their report. And we want to hold on to Tetra Tech for about another year. We'll have close to about maybe $200,000 left in our budget that we didn't spend out of our $3 million. And we want to hold on to them just for their technical expertise if we need any help in as expanding or going full wide implementation.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly on the last part. I did hear you say that hopefully we will have completed some of the field work by 2020, December of this year, and then we will engage for an additional year with them. Is that correct?
Right. So we hope to be all done with our reporting by December 2020 this year, and we want to hold on to them for another year on an as-needed basis in case we need any consultant work to help us as we phase into a citywide implementation or expand the program.
Let me ask you, is there a relationship between what we're doing here and our overall zero waste program? No?
Yes, so this pilot program is part of one of the goals in the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is asking for a citywide implementation of organics programs by the end of 2021. So the pilot was put together so that we could test how to engage residents through community outreach, as well as, obtain some feedback as whether this type of program is something that residents would feel that they could participate in. So in addition to this pilot, we did conduct a pilot prior. I'm not sure if you would remember, but it was the incinerator pilot where we gave residents a high-end food waste disposers that they could use to put food waste down their drain. So we're doing, multiple pilot programs to figure out what type of organic waste diversion programs we should have for the city.
Thank you.
It could be a multitude of them, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Romano. I guess ultimately, and I will confess, I've had a hard time quite hearing everything, and maybe I'm just a limited human, but which has been said. But I feel like the upshot here is that the limitations on obvious interaction in the context of the pandemic has prevented the pilot from moving forward over the last several months, and that's the impetus for this extension, correct?
Yes, most of it is because we needed to extend our final measurement. And also up front, we did have some time delays in preparing all the collateral material, in designing it and getting it through procuring all the materials that we needed to start engaging the residents in the pilot. Okay. So we had some delays. We put in maybe about 3 months, but we actually needed 2 more months in order to get a lot of that collateral designed and put together.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dr. Romano. Colleagues, any other questions? All right, with none, any objections? Commissioner Caloza?
No objections, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Villegas?
No objection.
Thank you. Vice President Garcia?
No objections.
Commissioner Davis? All right, and Commissioner Davis has seconded. So hearing no objections, we will move the item forthwith. Thank you, Dr. Romano. Have a good weekend. All right, friends and colleagues, that takes us to our next item on the agenda, number 5, all council districts covered. This is a contract amendment regarding the Terminal Island Renewable Energy Project, the Good fortune of attending the groundbreaking of this several years ago. The item recommends the board approve and forward this report with transmittals to the mayor and the city council with the request that the Board of Public Works be authorized to execute amendment number 4 with Geo Environment Technologies LLC, Geo Environment, to increase the ceiling cost from $58,220,507 to $74,648,569 and extend the term of the contract for an additional 3 years with 1 3-year renewal option, and 2, to authorize the president or 2 members of the board to execute the amendment upon the mayor's and city council's approval. A representative today from BOE is Alan Tran. Alan, Mr. Tran, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. President Good, the board commissioners, Mr. Ted Jordan, executive officer, and the bureau representative. My name is Alan Tran with the LA Sanitation.
Sorry.
Terminal Island Renewable Energy Project, TIRE, we call it TIRE, and it's also known as deep well injection, is one of the beneficial use options in the city biosolid program. Other options that we have are the land application in Green Acre Farm, at Green Acre Farm in Kern County, and Riverside Farm in the Riverside County. The composting option that we have at the South Kern Composting Facility and Nursery Product Composting Facility. And today, I only present the TIRE project. The operation started in July 2008 upon approval by EPA as a demonstration project. It's located within the city boundary inside the Terminal Island treatment plant, 1.5 miles away from the residential. The project's first 5 years classified EPA permit was issued in 2007. The second EPA permit was issued in 2013, and the third permit is in progress of review and approval. So even though the permit renewal is still being reviewed by EPA, EPA still allow us to continue the operation under existing permits. As for the operation, currently TIRE process about 20% of the total biosolid production from both Hyperion and Terminal Island, which is equivalent to 260 wet ton per day of the biosolid based on the 4 days operation per week. The material is mixed and injected into the well at the depth level of 5,000 feet. At the high temperature environment condition, which range about 115 Fahrenheit to 160 Fahrenheit, it caused anaerobic biodegradation of the biosolid. Basically, the material is self-decomposed within 24 hours. On September 28, 2015, Amendment number 3 was approved and executed by the Board of Public Works with a term of 3 years with 2 additional years extension option. The 2-year extension was approved on November 30, 2018, and it will expire on September 27 this year, 2020. So even though no methane gas has been collected yet, but there are other benefits that the city has been achieving through this option. First of all, it provides the city an additional beneficial use site for the city biosolid program, especially during the emergency. Secondly, it reduced the energy usage and the cost for Terminal Island treatment plant. As you know, that when we have TIRE in operation, the dewatering system of the treatment process is not required. By shutting down the dewatering system, we can save some energy costs and the chemical costs for the treatment process. Last but not least, that it helps to reduce the gas emission by reducing the transportation and hauling distance of the biosolid. No trucking is required for the terminal island biosolid. A shorter hauling distance required to haul the biosolid from Hyperion. For instance, we have sent load from here, from Hyperion to Grenada Farm. It's about 120 miles one way. So now we only have to go to Terminal Island. It's about 25 miles per way. So it's reduced the hauling distance and reduced the gas emission. Regarding the MBEWB participation, recently, Geo Environment has put a lot of effort and done a great job to perform a subcontractor outreach. They have found 2 MBE subcontractors and 1 WBE subcontractor to work on the amendment number 4. These subcontractors were verified and approved by the contract administration. Therefore, for the amendment number 4, Geo Environment will pledge 4.31% for the MBE, 0.67% for WBE, and 16.95% for the OBE. So we are here today to request the board to approve and forward this report with the transmittal to the mayor and the city council with the request that the board public works be authorized to execute amendment number 4 with Geo Environment to increase the ceiling cost from the $58 million, $220,507 to $74,648,569 and extend the term of the contract for an additional 3 years with 1 3-year renewal option. There will be no general fund impact resulting from this amendment. This amendment is funded by the sewer operation and maintenance funded. And that will conclude my staff report, and thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Tran, for the presentation. Colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Caloza?
Thank you, President Good. I'm trying to remember, Mr. Tran, whether or not you briefed me in this. I apologize if you did, and I'm asking you this again. But can you speak to us a little bit about their MBE numbers, just since the pledges are at 0% for MBE and WBE?
Okay.
At least for the first 2, and it's still pretty much at 0 or close to 0 for this one.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier, and I did brief you before, and we did amendment to the board report, and contract administration already reviewed and approved it before we scheduled to the board. So Geo Environment has filed 2 MBE subcontractor and 1 WBE subcontractor to work for the amendment number 4. So for the entire contract, include this amendment, Geo Environment will have 4.3% for the MBE, which is equivalent to like $3.2 million for the MBE participation, and 0.67% equivalent to $500,000 for the WBE, and 16.95% equivalent to $12.6 million for the OBE.
Thank you for pointing that out, sir. I think I was having a hard time. Must have been how it was uploaded. I'm not sure if my other colleagues have. We're having a hard time finding the board report. It's in the link and not in the packet, in case you're looking for it. Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Tran. I'm gonna defer the rest of my time to my other colleagues.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any questions, Commissioner Villegas? Oh, Vice President Garcia?
Oh, yes, thank you, President. Good. Alan, question. I see on the board report a very long list of subcontractors. Is that really all those folks they subcontracted with?
Yes, all those subcontractors has been working for this project because the complexity of the project requires the use of many subcontractors for the different purposes and phases of the project. The pilot study, the construction, the maintenance, and as right now we are the phases of the operation only. So only the operation and maintenance. But the contract administration has required us to include all the subcontractors who has worked for this contract into the Schedule B on the board report.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Villegas?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
No inquiries for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Tran. Is there a second to my motion to adopt item number 5 forthwith?
I'll second it. This is Teresa.
Okay. So seconded by Commissioner Villegas and Commissioner Davis. Any objections, Commissioner Colosa?
No objections, thank you.
Any objections, Vice President Garcia?
None.
All right. Hearing none, we'll approve the item to move forthwith.
Thank you so much, the board commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. Have a good weekend.
You too. Stay safe.
Okay, colleagues and friends, next item, number 6 on the agenda for all council districts is the addition of contractors in the emergency sewer and storm drain repair on-call list. Item number 6 recommends the board, 1, approve 5 additional qualified contractors to provide emergency sewer and storm drain repairs and to be added to the existing emergency sewer and storm drain repair on-call list. Number 2, approve the new list of 28 qualified contractors to provide emergency sewer and storm drain repairs. 3, authorize the city engineer to transmit contracts to the 5 additional qualified contractors for expeditious signature. 4, authorize the president or 2 members of the board to execute the signed contracts received from the approved contractors and forward the executed contracts to the city clerk to attest. And 5, determine the initial order of the 5 additional qualified contractors with a random drawing by the board, then subsequently add them to the bottom of the existing emergency sewer repair contractors list. The 5 additional qualified contractors will be placed in reverse order and subsequently added to the bottom of the existing emergency storm drain repair contractors list. Our representative today is Ryan Tolles. Mr. Tolles?
Good afternoon, President Good and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Clearer than most.
All right, great. So, yeah, my name is Ryan Tolles. I'm with the Bureau of Engineering's Wastewater Conveyance Construction Division. Here today requesting the authority to approve the selection of these 5 additional qualified contractors to provide the on-call emergency sewer and storm drain services. So a bit of background on this program. LA Sanitation and Environment holds a responsibility for the operation and maintenance of the city's sewer and storm drain system. And there are certain circumstances where the maintenance or the repair that's required are beyond the capacity of the LA Sanitation construction and maintenance forces. And so in order to bridge this gap, the board has established a rotational list of contractors using an emergency sewer and storm drain on-call contractor or on-call contract that's administered by the Bureau of Engineering. On April 28th of 2017, a request for qualifications was issued to establish the current existing list that we're using today. On June 5th of 2017, the Bureau received 25 submittals of statements of qualifications, and 22 of which received scores of or above passing. On October 30th of 2017, the board approved the list of these 22 qualified contractors. And subsequent to that, an additional contractor, Cordage Construction, was added by the board on December 4th of 2017. And the reason for that was because Cordage was originally deemed non-responsive and then later determined to be responsive. So we, as of December 4th of 2017, we had 23 contractors. That October 30th action of the board was also amended on November 27th of 2017, instructing the Bureau of Engineering to reopen the pre-qualified on-call list 2 years after its initial establishment. And this was primarily to address protests received from a contractor that did not qualify during the original RFQ. On November 6th of 2019, the request for qualifications was reissued with the purpose of adding these additional contractors as requested by the board back in November of 2017. On December 18th of 2019, we received 5 packages. The 5 contractors as submitted were GERBCON Incorporated, JR Pipeline Construction Company, Spinello Infrastructure West, W.A. Rassick Construction, and William Pipeline. The SOQs were evaluated by a team that consisted of the Bureau of Engineering and Bureau of Contract Administration, and they were evaluated based on the criteria that was set forth in the RFQ. The local business preference program did apply to this process, which grants the applicants an additional 8 points if they're a certified local business. So 3 of the 5 contractors that submitted did benefit from this program. And due to the emergency nature of the work and the fact that the work is unknown at the time that these contracts are executed, the business inclusion program is exempt. This contract is exempt from the business inclusion program, and that was received by the mayor and the board back when it was originally established. But the contract does, however, require BCA to approve and monitor subcontractor usage, and that's summarized in the previous work record section of the report that you have before you. Staff recommends that the board declare all 5 of the contractors to be responsive and award them a contract. Their contract will end at the same time as the current contract, which is in 2022. And the funding for this comes from the Sewer Capital Fund and does not impact the general fund. I'm here to answer any questions you may have as it relates to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Toles. Commissioners, any questions on this item?
Yes. Yes. Cut yours off. Yes.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Campos. Dr. Davis.
Okay.
Commissioners, any questions on this item?
Yes. I have
Davis.
some. Okay, thank you. Mr. Toles, I definitely appreciate the additional contractors that will be added and realize that it will help meet the demand and the challenge that our bureaus have to get this work done. And I do also understand that oftentimes when we are preparing to expand our capacity, that we do need to make sure that we're able to get things done. But having said that, in these additional 5 that we're adding to the list, are there any things about these 2 companies that we should know in terms of their addition? In other words, are they from the Los Angeles area? Are any of them, inconsequently minority business owners or women-owned businesses or any of that kind of thing? Can you just summarily tell me about these 5 companies?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. I can give you a little bit of information as it relates to that. So the 3 contractors that were local businesses were GERBCON Inc., JR Pipeline, and Spinello Infrastructure. They received the 8 additional points. It's on page 4 of the report. You'll see a table summarizing that. If you look on page 5 of the report, there's a section that talks about previous work record of each contractor. The first one was GERBCON. They have no previous work record in the last 5 years within the city, and they did. Bureau of Contract Administration reached out to some of the references, and they did have good references, but this company did not have any recent work within the city of LA, GERBCON. The next one, JR Pipeline, they have numerous contracts that they've worked on in the city. They did have one project, and this is noted in the board report, where they received an unauthorized subcontractor substitution penalty. back in 2018. But outside of that, Bureau of Contract Administration found no significant or unresolved problems with that contractor. W.A. Rassick has also worked on several contracts with the board, and no significant issues were found with them either. There is a summary on, and then Williams Pipeline, also the same thing. They've worked with numerous city public works projects, and no significant problems were found in the Bureau of Contract Administration investigation either. And if you look also on page 6, there's a table that summarizes the history of each of these contractors over the last 5 years as it relates to business inclusion. And you could see for the contractors that have worked with the city, how they shape up as it relates to WBE, SBE, and so on. You can look at those percentages on that sheet. Hopefully that answers some of your question.
So what I think I hear you saying is that as we look at each of these 5 companies that we're adding on, many of them seem to have had successful work experiences with us in the past. That number 2, when we look at the practices that they have employed with us, that they have tended to have a diverse workforce of subcontractors from the past work that we have evaluated. Is that correct?
Yes, well, yeah, the one for JR Pipeline, for example, one of the contractors that's worked with us over the last 5 years, their SBE participation was 10.93%.
Great.
And so, yeah, so it's Spinello, another contractor that's worked with us, and we have record of their SBE participation is 9.12%. So, yes, those contractors have been successful in finding those pledged amounts.
Great. And then finally, we have one company that has not done business with us before, but in our background research, we discovered that they have been doing good work with the references that we've communicated with, and so they got an opportunity to be included.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So what I'd like to say is that I appreciate the research, and I appreciate us reviewing the background, and I think that that's really important as we move forward towards trying to reach inclusivity. And certainly, as I said earlier, we don't necessarily have to do it right now, but the fact is that we do want to be forward thinking. And then finally, I will say that I think it's important to also have companies like the one that has never worked with us before, but is a good performer in terms of doing construction work. Because I believe that we consistently must create and have opportunities where individuals are getting an opportunity to engage with us and to expand not only the work that we're doing, but expanding the people with whom we do the work. So I want to say that, again, I think that that is equally as important as the good work that you have done in researching and evaluating the others that we're adding on today. And I thank you for the work.
Thanks for the support, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Any other questions, colleagues?
No questions from me.
Commissioner Colosa?
No questions for me either. Thank you.
Vice President Garcia?
No questions on my end.
Okay. All right. Hearing no additional questions and presumptive, any objections to moving forward? None?
No objections.
Okay.
None.
No objections.
All right. So let's go ahead and conduct the drawing to establish the additional names to each of the list. Dr. Campos, you want to kick this off?
I will, Mr. President. Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. Let me just be very clear here. I just have a quick question for clarity. Mr. Tolles or maybe Mr. Jordan, if you can assist me with this. So we have two lists that we have currently. One is the sewer repair contractor list, and then we also have the storm drain contractor list. The sewer repair contractor list currently has 23 names, or 23 entities. We will go ahead and draw the names. As we draw the names, it would go in sequential order, which is order 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. That's very clear to me. The question I have is on the emergency storm drain contractor list. What I'd like to propose is that we do the same thing that we did back in December of 2017 when we added Cordage Construction, and that is to draw the names. It would be in reverse order, so the first person or the first entity that we would draw out would be the first, or it would be item number, it would be placed on the list as number 1, and then, I'm sorry, the first person that we draw off the list would be placed on queue number 5, the second person would be number 4, the third entity would be number 3, the fourth entity would be number 2, and the fifth entity would be number 1 on the storm drain contractor list. Does that make sense, Mr. Told, Mr. Jordan?
The only clarification I'd like to make to that is they would not be placed at the top of the storm drain list. They would be placed in reverse order at the bottom of the storm drain list. Okay. So they wouldn't be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'd be...
And that's the purpose of my question, because if we do that, then that would be deviating from what we did in prior times in December of 2017. Again, I'll defer to the board as to how they want to stack this up. It's very clear to me the emergency sewer repair program, the sewer repair contractor list, that's easy. It's the storm drain contractor list that's unclear to me in terms of where they would land on the list. If this board would like to put them in reverse order, starting with number 24 through 28, and put them at the bottom of the list, we can do so, but that would deviate from what we did with Cordish.
So, Dr. Campos, so when the original list was made, the 23rd was put, the first choice was put at the bottom of the list, and it was done in inverse order?
Inverse order, yes. And when we added Cordage, the same thing happened there. Cordage ended up going as item number 23, or in order number 23 on the sewer repair contractor list. They then became number 1 on the emergency storm drain contractor list to keep the playing field leveled, if you will. Again, I'll defer to Mr. Tolles if you want to provide some additional input, but ultimately it's the board that would make that decision in terms of how you want me to rank them in order or place them in that order.
Sure. I think some of the logic behind why they were to be placed at the end of the list was because they're being added after the fact. And so we didn't want them to be put ahead of those who qualified originally on the contract. That was the logic behind placing them at the end of the list. If the board would like to change that, I think the Bureau wouldn't have any objections.
Can we ask our city attorney, Mr. Jordan, for any kind of input or insight into this? Would it place anybody in an unfair position?
Well, we rotate through the list. I don't think we're legally required to do it one way or another. It really is a matter of discretion for the board. I think what we did originally when we put together the list to begin with, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Campos, it sounds like, we arranged the firms 1 through 22, and then for the sewer, and then for the storm drain, were they in the reverse order then?
That's correct.
So first firm on the sewer list was the last firm on the storm drain list.
The storm drain was the reverse order.
Yeah, okay. So that's really not that doesn't give us any guidance at all for what we're doing today. I think more significantly was what we did when we added Cordage, the firm that, was added somewhat after the fact. They were originally recommended to be non-responsive, but then upon further review, they were determined to be responsive. And they were added to the bottom of the one list and the top of the other list. However, Cordage was part of the original submission they submitted before. They were responsive and achieved a passing score, a qualifying score rather. These 5 firms that we're adding now either didn't respond before or responded and were simply found to be not qualified based on achieving a score that was inadequate to be here. So I don't think we're necessarily bound to follow what we did with Cordage, because Cordage, after all, submitted with the original set and passed. Whereas these 5 firms now either didn't submit before or submitted before and didn't pass. So, but in the end, it's up to the board. The law and other principles don't dictate how we add them here.
So it's ultimately the board's decision to rank them or to place them in the order for the storm drain, whether they want to add the additional 5 at the end of the storm drain, which would become 24 through 28 in reverse order, or whether we would add them to the top of the list, which would then put them at 1 through 5.
Just,
Can I ask a quick question to Ryan?
yes, please.
Ryan,
Vice President.
why are we adding these 5 now? And maybe you said it in your presentation, but just a quick one. Why are we adding? Because then that would probably make us make a better decision whether we just add them, in a random order, add them at the end. Or I guess the other conversation is, do we mix them all up in? But why were they added so late?
They were added mainly to address a protest that was received by the contractors who didn't qualify in the original round. So the board's action on October 30th of 2017 was amended on November 27th of 2017, instructing the Bureau to reopen the list to allow additional contractors to be added, perhaps after they maybe had additional experience and more work that they would have produced after that 2 years. So it was kind of reopening the opportunity. That was the reason for why we're doing this.
I see. But given that reason, that tells me that we should not, it makes me say that we should probably not mix them in with the other 22 or 23 and put them in a random order by selection right now at the end, because then I feel like the 23 that are already, or 22, whatever they are, already on the list will get an unfair advantage. That's my take on this.
Yeah.
If I can speak again, maybe, if I'm understanding correctly, I think that's a reasonable recommendation. The firms that are on the list already, on each list, to have the new firms get placed above them. I don't know, I wouldn't be so strong as to say that they're being penalized, but the firm at the top of the list, if we put these new 5 firms in at the top, is now going to be number 6 instead of number 1. And they've been on this list. They submitted a passing statement of qualification at the beginning, and we're on the original list. So,
that was the logic behind why we have it the way we have it.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding your recommendation, Commissioner, it's that for each list, the 5 new firms be added to the bottom. If you want to do sort of for the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, have them be sort of in that order on one list, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on the other list. That way, at least within the set of 5, one firm is going to be at the top of one list, and that firm will be at the bottom of the other list. I don't know, not top of the list, but top of that set of 5.
Top of the bottom list, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Dr. Campos, I'll let the board decide.
That sounds reasonable.
President.
That sounds reasonable to me. So basically, the first entity we would draw from would be number 24 on the sewer repair program. They would then become number 28 on the storm drain contractor list, vice versa. And then the secondary person that we would draw would be number 25 on the sewer repair. They would become number 27 on the storm drain. Sounds reasonable to me.
Commissioner Davis, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know, were there instructions in the motion as it relates to where they place? Did I remember having heard some instructions in the motion?
There is a recommendation on the board report itself, and that's to determine the initial order, and then the 5 additional qualified contractors will be placed in reverse order and subsequently added to the bottom of the existing emergency storm drain repair contractor list. So there is a recommendation from sanitation on how to place them.
Right.
My intent here is just to be very clear on if you're going to change the ranking, if you will, or the establishment of the list from what this board did in 2017 to what you're doing now in 2020. Just want to be very clear in case there's any protests or if there's any issues from any of the new contractors in terms of I was supposed to go ahead of the line because the storm drain contractor list was in reverse order to begin with. But listening to Commissioner or Vice President Garcia and the rest of the board, it seems logical and rational and reasonable to place them at the bottom.
Right, and that's what's recommended in the
That's what's
board,
recommended, yes.
in the board motion.
Yes, just want to be very clear.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I may point out the board, the staff report on the agenda, indicates that each of the 5 firms are going to be placed at the bottom of their respective lists. Those 5 contractors presumably are aware of the report. It was agendized. I don't think any of them are here. They certainly had the opportunity to come in and submit a comment and have chosen not to. So you could read into that what you may.
Can I ask one quick, thank you, Mr. Jordan, thank you, colleagues. One quick question also just contextually for Mr. Tolles. In terms of volume, how often are these on-call contractors needed? So is number 24 very likely to be called upon over the course of the next calendar year, for example?
Absolutely. On multiple occasions, they'll be called. Yeah, we deal with about 1,200, 600 actual initial requests annually. So definitely within a month, all of them are usually cycled through.
So in the simplest terms, everybody's going to get work. And I would agree with where the conversation is led that it would be, it seems that it would betray fairness, frankly, to put folks at the top when they were deemed unresponsive in the first place. However, putting them at the bottom of the list in the inverse order also maintains consistency. So that sounds like a very reasonable approach. Vice President Garcia, you initiated that sort of thought. Would you like to move that as the process, or do we even need to?
I think the recommendation number 5 basically lands back to where we are now.
That's right. Okay.
Great. Okay, with that said,
Any other objections or questions, colleagues?
Nope.
No questions. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the deliberation on that. So
Yeah,
I do have...
I'm sorry, this is Ted. I'm sorry to interrupt. Brianna, you were talking about adding them as, I think, starting at number 23. I could be wrong here and maybe having misread the report, but do we still have that number of firms that are on these on-call lists? I know that's how many were originally selected and placed on the on-call list, but I think over the last couple of years, I could be wrong, but I thought some of the firms had dropped off, but maybe not.
Yeah, no, well, they're not off the list, but some of them are inactive. So that's why it'll be, we just said at the bottom of the list as opposed to a specific number, because the number fluctuates in terms of who's active at the time. It depends on the number of projects that they have and that sort of thing. So I think right now, though, to answer your question, there's 16 that are active.
Okay, so you'll just want to clarify, are you placing these 5 new firms at the bottom of the active list or at the bottom of the list, knowing that there may be some inactive folks in there above them?
Well, they'll be at the bottom of the existing list, and then the inactive folks will just be skipped as we get to them.
Very well. Presumably, a firm that's inactive can change its status to active if circumstances dictate.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. They have an interest, as it were.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's get started with the drawing. So if it's okay with all board members, I'd like to recommend that our new president be the one to draw the names. Commissioners, okay, great.
Go for it.
So again, the first entity that we will, or the first name that we'll pull would go on rank number 24 on the emergency sewer repair. They would subsequently be placed on number 28 on the emergency storm drain. So I do have an envelope with 5 names, and we will give the honors to the president.
I said to Dr. Campos earlier, this is like, I feel like I'm in a white elephant.
This is important stuff, Greg.
Okay, W.A. Rasick Construction Company, Inc.
So Rasick would be placed on 24 and 28 for the storm drain.
Spiniello, Infrastructure West. forgive if I'm mispronouncing the names, if any of these companies are out there, although I don't believe they are.
So Spinello would be 25 on the sewer repair and number 27 on the storm drain.
JR Pipeline Company, Inc.
JR Pipeline, 26 on the sewer repair and number 26 on the storm drain contract.
Yeah, so we're about the middle. Williams Pipelines Contractors.
Williams Pipeline would be placed on 27 on the sewer repair list and 25 on the storm drain list.
Thank you, sir. GerbCon, Inc.
That's the last one. GerbCon would be placed on 28 on the sewer repair and number 24 on the storm drain. Mr. President, that concludes the drawing, and now you can present a motion.
Fantastic. So is there a second to my motion to adopt item 6 as amended, subject to the, yes, as amended, subject to the mayor's approval due to cost containment, to the cost containment memo of June 24, forthwith.
Okay.
Seconded by Vice President Garcia. Thank you. Any objections? Commissioner Villegas?
I seconded it too.
Oh, you seconded too. I'm sorry, y'all. So seconded both by Vice President Garcia and Commissioner Villegas. Sorry, Commissioner. Any objections, Commissioner Colosa?
No objections, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Davis? All right. So moved. Hearing none, the item is approved forthwith. Thank you, Dr. Campos, and thank you, Mr. Jordan, for your help on all that.
And that's as
And
amended.
guidance. Thank you, Mr. Tolles.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. This takes us to our last item on the agenda, item number 7 in all council districts. This is a sole source task order solicitation from the Bureau of Engineering recommending that the board, 1, authorize the execution of a sole source task order solicitation number 067 with GGA Inc. For homeless housing under the Shelter and Housing Program at the Bureau of Engineering with a not to exceed amount of $1 million, including contingency, and 2, declare GGA Inc. exempt from the Business Inclusion Program requirements subject to the Mayor's Office approval, which Bureau of Engineering has requested on July 1, 2020. Our representative today is Mr. Mahmoud Karamzada. Sorry, Mahmoud. So welcome, sir, and please go ahead.
Good afternoon, President Good, and I also would like to welcome you on behalf of my boss, Gary Limor, and my colleague in Bureau of Engineering. Welcome you to the board, and thank you for your time this late afternoon. And yes, I'm here today in order to let you know that the Bureau of Engineering has put together a program in order to deal with this new phase of the homeless housing. As you all know, on May 15, 2020, there was a permanent injunction by the Judge Carter was in place for the city of LA and the county in order for the homeless population near the freeway and near the under passageways, under the bridges, to be relocated to a temporary permanent housing by the city and the county. Their number is about 6,000 to 7,000 residents living around those areas. And the logic, of course, was that they are at the risk of COVID-19, spreading COVID-19, and also being unhoused they are very exposed to other diseases and the freeway pollution. As you know, housing for homeless has been one of the top priorities of the mayor and mayor's office. And on July 1st, the city council also approved a motion authorizing $100 million from the COVID-19 federal relief fund monies, and further also approved $25 million of the $100 million for the Bureau of Engineering, from which the $2.5 million was transferred to the Bureau's fund in order to start this effort. As part of the COVID-19 homeless roadmap, the Bureau has put together a new program called the Shelter and Housing Program. And the Shelter and Housing Program will start this new phase of providing housing for the homeless population. And these funds are reserved for the purpose of developing plans for each council district. We recognize that this effort is scattered, these problems are scattered around the city, and the best way to find a solution is to make sure that every effort is organized within the 15 council districts. And these housing efforts will include all type of housing. I can mention a few interim housing facilities such as bridge home sites, pallet shelter sites, rapid housing, shared housing, or safe camping plans, hotel leasing, or acquisition or repurposing of the state trailers that are being used for COVID-19 response as well. The $25 million that is allocated immediately for the Bureau of Engineering is also include the effort from General Services Department for hiring staff and consultant to conduct the assessment, necessary assessment, environmental studies, and if necessary to order shelter structures or pay project fees and order hygiene trailers and other form of supplies that needed to make this relocation. The City Council also approved that the requirement, or demanded, I should say, the requirement for the business inclusion program be lifted for this purpose, and allowing the engineering to engage with the management support and construction contract awards that are necessary for this purpose to continue the process of urgency as a urgent necessity for contracting with these entities. We would also would like permit BOE to award contracts following a negotiations with these entities, being consulting firms or construction contractor firms. The GST is also procurement process suspended for these purposes as well. Due to this urgency, we have actually moved simultaneously with the council approval. We moved and looked at our pre-qualified list of consultants in order to augment the city's skill, the city's staff skill and resources, and bring consultant in. So we look at the top firm of one of our lists. We look at the entire list of architectural that we have within the Bureau, and also establish some criteria. Those criteria include the good standing of these firms with the public agencies, with the public projects accomplishment throughout the last decade, to make sure they're in good standing in terms of their working with public agency, specifically with the City of Los Angeles. Also, we wanted them to have a good experience in the last several years performing on homeless housing. We like these consultants to hit the road running rather than learning effort in order to get these housing efforts going on. So getting the firm's progress as fast as the judge was asked in the preliminary injunction, and the aggressive schedule that are set for these relocations. So at the end of this process, we recognized that or determined that GGA one of the consultants on the pre-qualified architectural list that the Bureau has been very good standing with the overall Bureau's projects in the last 12 years, and also their experience, or our experience, should say, working with them in the last 24 months, achieving several projects for the bridge home housing are very valuable. And we used them for many projects. Their expertise are very valuable to be carried over to this new phase of housing. So we think that they have the greatest potential to meet these criteria that we set. So as a result, the Bureau requests that the Board of Public Works authorize the overall basically sole source authorization of the task orders number 067 in order to be issued to GGA or not to exceed $1 million. We have discussed this with Mr. Jordan, Ted Jordan, the Board General Counsel, for his concurrence as well. And the funding has been provided by the Council, is secured in the account number that we provided to you. And also, as you mentioned, President Good, that we have asked the Mayor Office for the VIP waiver, and we hope that very soon we will receive some concurrence from them. And I'm very hopeful because the last Bridge Home program was provided with the blanket waiver for the BIP purposes. Thank you so much again for giving me time, and I'll be glad to answer any question you might have.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Colleagues, before we get to questions, I would love if Mr. Jordan could please just opine at least briefly or to the degree that you want about the findings on the sole source, and just to unpack that a little bit for us, Mr. Jordan, if you could.
Certainly. So, as Mahmoud had indicated, the Council has taken an action in this matter. The action that the Council took could be kind of broken down to maybe a couple of different things. One is the Council took actions that put the money in place, the federal COVID relief money, put it in place specifically for the work that the Bureau is doing. The second sort of, if you look at the Council's action in sort of two big things, was to make the findings and resolutions necessary under the urgent necessity provisions and the findings based on the presence of a declared emergency, that the competitive bidding requirements are suspended, both due to the urgent necessity and the need for this work, as well as for the declared emergency. So that really goes to the heart of the sole source here. Moreover, under the city's contract itself, this is not a new contract, rather this is a task order to a firm that has an existing contract, along with a lot of other firms that have that same contract. So those contracts define how we will award task orders. And so the findings made by the Council and what's before the Board will also justify the award of the task order within the existing contractual framework that we have with the firms on the on-call list. If I can make one clarification to Mahmoud's presentation, the Council's action, while it's very significant in the competitive bidding and suspending those rules, it didn't really necessarily address the business inclusion program. That's really a requirement that the Mayor established by the Mayor's executive order. So that's why the Bureau is requesting the Mayor to waive that. There is some language in the business inclusion program that obviates the need for a waiver when federal monies are being used or grant dollars are being used and it's inconsistent with the grant. I'm not familiar enough with the COVID dollars to know whether that automatically means BIP cannot apply. However, the Bureau needs to go to the Mayor's office under the cost containment memo from June of this year. And so since we already need the Mayor's approval to issue this task order, I think it's prudent to get the Mayor's waiver of the BIP as well. The Mayor is very much aware of the urgency of this program, so I do not anticipate any undue delay there. I think that covers what I wanted to discuss, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
President Good, I may ask something? I may add something?
Yes.
The two things, I forgot to mention that the preliminary injunction later was terminated in lieu of an agreement between the City of Los Angeles and the county. apologize for that mission. And two, as Mr. Jordan said about the cost containment, we have sent a memo or a letter to the CAO asking for the same exemption from cost containment as a result of June 24th memo from the mayor. Thank you.
Good. Also, thank you, Mahmoud. I also forgot to mention two things. One, all of those council actions that I described, the putting the money in place, allocating it for this use, allocating the money for this use, and as well as the findings regarding suspending the competitive bidding rules. The mayor actually formally concurred in those actions. So we do have the mayor's approval for that. However, looking at the mayor's cost containment memo, I don't think we can extend the mayor's concurrence in sort of earmarking money or moving money or making, or the findings relating to competitive bidding. I don't think we can extend that to equating to the mayor's approval of the award of this particular task order. So I think you still need to go to the mayor to get that. It sounds like staff is well underway. Also, just as a technical correction, the Bureau's motion, the motion before the board talks about the request being made of the mayor to waive the BIP, or the Business Inclusion Program. It was agendized in maybe a way that needs to be adjusted somewhat. So the board isn't declaring the BIP requirements to not apply. The board, my recommendation would be we amend that so that the board simply concurs in the staff's request. So it's not only the Bureau requesting the exemption, it's the board and the Bureau requesting. But we're not really declaring anything. It's up to the mayor to take that action.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Thank you, Mahmoud. One quick other contextual thing, and then questions for colleagues that would open up. As you touched on, Mahmoud, it is my understanding that yes, the preliminary injunction was lifted as a consequence or as a result of an agreement between the city and the county that also included a commitment by the city to immediately move on establishing 6,700 shelter beds throughout the city near overpasses and underpasses in the city, and that there are continuing negotiations around a larger potential settlement with the LA Alliance case, and so that's an important piece of context as well. I would like to open this up to questions, and let's start with Commissioner Davis.
Great. Thank you so much. And I want to say that I see that this certainly is in response to the decision that we had by Judge Carter, and it was requiring both the city and the county to provide spaces and shelter and alternative housing. And I am so glad that we were able to get federal dollars in which to help make this happen. I think that's critically important. And I also want to say what I said to the last BOE project, where when we have an emergent issue, it's a given that we will absolutely come together and get it done without any barriers. And so that's the case as it relates to the BIP that was spoken about by our attorney as well. But aside from all of that, and I think we do that every time, and I think we should, but aside from all of that, I want to talk about something that we don't talk about often, and that is, just because we don't have to doesn't mean that we should not try. So, having said that, this has nothing to do with the exemption. This has all to do with administration and innovation. Because if we keep doing what we keep doing, we're going to keep getting what we keep getting. And this supersedes Judge Carter's ruling, and it goes to our own potential as an organization, as a government, as the city of Los Angeles. And so I will say to you what I said with the program that we had before from BOE today with Mr. Tolles, and that is simply, I would love to see us, to all extent possible, to still try to see what kind of innovation and results we can get as we begin to meet this need that absolutely must and has to be done expeditiously, regardless of who does it. It must be done, no argument there. But my challenge to you is to talk about what nobody else is talking about. let us try to think innovatively. Let us try to reach to see if, in fact, there might happen to be some possibility along the way. Let's embrace that as we do this, because those two values are not enemies of one another. They can complement each other. So that's my point.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Davis. Very good point. I really appreciate your guidance, and we have had several meetings throughout this determination with GGA consulting firm, and we mentioned exactly the same. We told them, even though the board might approve, or the mayor office might approve this exemption, but we still like them to do whatever they can do in order to participate with those efforts that is the city's guidance. Thank you so much for making that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Other colleagues, any questions? Commissioner Villegas.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Colosa?
I don't have any other questions, but I'll just make a quick comment to thank Mr. Karimzadeh and the entire BOE team for their work on prioritizing homelessness in the city. I saw you guys opened 2 recent bridge homes in the last few weeks, and I just wanted to commend you on that. I remember when I was at the groundbreaking just a few months ago, and now I see the project is complete, so you guys are really building these in record time. If you haven't seen the photos, I think the mayor was out there a few days ago with Councilmember Buscaino, so they're really something to see in terms of how BOE is kind of expanding their portfolio and providing this service for not just the city, but the county. So just wanted to express my thanks to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caloza. I relayed that message to my colleague as well. Thank you.
Vice President Garcia?
No questions, President.
Okay. I would echo Commissioner Caloza's congratulations on the great work that the Bureau of Engineering and Mr. Karimzadeh, as well as Mr. Kikuchi, are continuing to do on homelessness. I would equally echo Commissioner Davis's sentiments and concern, or really just exhortation to even as we are forced, frankly, by the urgency of this existential crisis to move with such extraordinary pace and alacrity that even in situations where we are not able, frankly, to employ policies that we have as the city and as a body we've adopted, that we think out of the box. I mean, we are going to be dealing with the challenge of homelessness for a while, and that's said with sadness, but also with resolve. And so I think we've got to really make sure that we are digging in to make sure that there's participation, even if we have to move fast, for lack of a better way to put it. So I thank you also, Commissioner Davis, for your comments there. So with that, Mahmoud, thank you. Is there a second to my motion to adopt item number 7, adopt item number 7 as amended with a replacement of declare in recommendation 2 to concur forthwith?
And then subject to the mayor's office.
Subject
to mayor's
yes.
approval, sorry.
Yes, subject to the mayor's office approval. I have a second both from Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Calosa. Any objections, Commissioner Villegas?
No objections, thanks.
Any objections, Vice President Garcia?
No objections.
Okay, so hearing no objections, the item, we will move forward the amended item forthwith. Thank you so much, Mahmoud.
Thank you, President Good, and Commissioners. I appreciate it. Have a nice weekend.
Have a great weekend. Appreciate it. And And thank you also, Ted, for your counsel and help on this one. Okay, moving forward, Dr. Campos, does this clear the desk?
It does, yes.
Okay. No massive stumbles, right? All right, well, thank you, Dr. Campos. We will then turn the meeting over to Commissioner Jessica Colosa, who has a very important and an important adjourning motion for today.
Great, thank you so much, President Good. Today I'm going to be doing a adjourning motion to close in the memory of someone in the Asian American community who recently passed. It's with deep sadness that I share John Eric Swing, the Executive Director of Search to Involve Filipino Americans, also known as SIPA, based in historic Filipino town, passed away on June 28, 2020, due to complications in his fight against COVID-19. He was 48 years old. He was a greatly respected and passionate community advocate. John had worked at SIPA since 2015, leading the organization's small business counseling services and programming. Most recently, he managed SIPA's entrepreneurship program and a multitude of volunteer service projects, even leading up to his COVID-19 diagnosis. He was still doing volunteer work to ensure that others in the community got the food and services that they needed. Earlier this year, the board of directors at SIPA unanimously approved John's promotion to executive director after concluding a year-long nationwide search. And so it's really unfortunate that we only got to see John in this role for a few months before he had passed. But he has a tremendous amount of respect in the Asian American and in the Filipino American community. He was really deeply involved in several other organizations, including the Festival of Philippine Arts and Culture, where he led fund development and operational management. Two, for the Filipino American Services Group Incorporated, also known as FOSG. He also worked with the Asian Pacific Health Foundation and Hep B Free San Diego. He served on the boards for the Coalition of Filipino American Chambers of Commerce and My New Hope Foundation. John was also a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and an avid world traveler. He was trilingual, fluent in Tagalog, Spanish, and English. This past week, the board at SIPA approved a motion to name its future small business center in John's honor. Tentatively planned as a John Eric Swing Small Business Center, this future space will be part of SIPA's soon-to-be redesigned headquarters in historic Filipino town. John is survived by his parents, Ellis and Aurora, his wife, Ellen, and their 4 children, Zachary, Joshua, Chloe, Mackenzie, his two stepchildren, Sasha and Nico, his sister, Karen, and her husband, Craig, his niece, Mayumi, nephew, Miles, his brother, Peter, and his wife, Yorleni, and nephews, Jaden, Gianni, and Jonah. And just on a personal level, I had an opportunity to work with John in the community, and was somebody that was always so welcoming to everyone and made you feel like you had known him forever, even if you had just met. So it will be a tremendous loss for us, for the Filipino community and the greater Asian American community, since he was close to so many of us. So John, we'll miss you. We thank you for your commitment to serving our city. And with that, we end today's board meeting on July 10, 2020 in your memory. Thank you, President Good, for letting me do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Colosa. So I guess we're adjourned. Well, with that, although you have adjourned, so we are adjourned. Thank you.